Hey everyone, welcome back. You got Wes Spencer here from CyberFOX. We're talking about an awesome conversation with an MSP and a cyber insurance person who's an expert. So before I do anything more, let's just jump into some intros so you know who you're talking to. Angel, you want to go first, say who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Thanks, Wes. I'm Angel Rojas with DataCore Technology Solutions. I've been running my MSP here out of Tampa for 20 years and just happy to be here. And thanks for having me.
Fantastic. And David, you look a little bit more like a podcaster than you do someone in insurance. You want to say who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so funny you mentioned that. My name's David Carothers, and I actually have been on the road living out of a suitcase far more than I should, speaking publicly, so I took the opportunity to dress down today. But I own Florida Risk Partners. We have a practice in working with MSPs specifically, but also am very much in tune with the cutting edge landscape of cyber insurance, and I do have a podcast inside the insurance space.
Fantastic. Well, towards the end, I'd love for you to share the podcast as well, because I think people are always itching and wanting to know more on especially on the cyber insurance journey for sure. And really, Angel, that kind of kicks us off to the very first question that we wanted to hear from you. From your perspective as an MSP owner, are you noticing changes from the carriers when we talk about the cyber insurance controls that they're wanting to see? Are you seeing big differences over the past maybe 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, the applications, the underwriting applications are getting longer and harder to fill out. There are way more specifics that are being asked. It seems like underwriters don't want just for you to answer yes or no, but they're more interested in how and why and what MSPs are doing to secure their clients, or even clients are doing to secure their own environment.
David, same thing? Is that you seeing the same thing on your end?
So, funny enough, actually, it was conversation with Angel, and I use this all the time when I'm talking with other MSPs, but I want to say it was probably 2 years ago. We really saw an uptick in the change of applications and structure, number of questions, and it's only gotten more stringent since then. But I'll never forget it. I sent it over to him, and when he completed it and sent it back, he said, it looks like the underwriters are finally figuring out what we're doing because of the number of questions and the follow-up questions that they ask, which, it's interesting to think that something that is liquid as cyber didn't have that kind of detail around it to begin with. It was almost kind of like, let's just throw it against the wall and see what sticks, and then when the claims come in, we'll figure out what we've written.
So, Angel, I want to come back to you then in light of that, right? So one of the things we know from AutoElevate, one of the products that we have at CyberFOX, and it's important in the terms of least privilege. You look at all the CIS controls, you look at especially control 4 and 5, we deeply play into that. But one thing I think is kind of new is seeing how privileged access management is starting to play into the world of cyber insurance as well. And I'm just curious if you can share a little bit from your perspective how implementing AutoElevate has been helpful in your own security posture and that of your clients.
Sure. So one of the strategies we deployed here at DataCore is that every year we want to add new things to what we do, so that, again, anticipating what's going to be asked next year in that underwriting application, we can show that there's progress. And I think that's something that David and I have worked on over the years to build that history of progress, which helps us to get the premiums we get. So adding AutoElevate gave us a great way to do a few things. You mentioned least privilege. So one of the biggest pain points for MSPs is that when you remove privileges from a client's environment, giving them the service they need at the speed they need with an efficient way to do that becomes very difficult. And AutoElevate answers that for us, because in under 30 seconds we can elevate the privilege request. We can give them admin access to do the software update they need to do, or install the driver they need to install. Whatever it is that they need to do, we can do it quickly and then withdraw that admin access, which I just saw an article by the NSA that came out today or the other day with some advice on how to protect from ransomware. The top piece of advice is education, but shortly under that is removing administrative access from computers. So before AutoElevate, removing that admin access actually created a customer service issue for us. AutoElevate eliminated that customer service issue by giving us a very quick way to give the client what they need. And also for clients that like to self-service, we can actually extend the AutoElevate tool to them so they can auto-approve their own requests, and we get full accountability of whether that request was safe or not, and we can audit it and again do our due diligence to meet our obligation.
I think it's interesting because you may or may not even know this, Wes, but Angel is my client. I'm also Angel's client. So there's reciprocity in this relationship here.
Got it.
And I didn't know anything at all about this removing permissions thing. It just showed up on my screen one day, right? I mean, Angel and I don't have conversations about the intricacies of what he's going to put in. My goal is to outsource all of that to his company so I don't have to have it rent space in my head. So I'll never forget, because I was in Audacity or something like that we would use to record some audio, and a driver needed to be updated or something, and I hit the button to do it, and all of a sudden this screen pops up and it starts this countdown of like 30 seconds saying, we've alerted so-and-so to have them do this. I got the notification that I'd been approved. We could put the driver up, and we don't like losing permission, man. I'm just going to be honest. I don't think people on the client end, and y'all know this, we don't want to lose the permission. I'm in insurance and risk management. I see the money that gets paid out for this stuff, and I still don't want to lose permission because it's never convenient. It's always when I need to go in and use the new software that it's got to update the driver. And in the past, I'd have to pick up the phone, or I'd have to create a ticket, and then I'd hope it got accelerated enough. And it might be an hours-long process for that to happen. So for me to know that, hey, look, yeah, this thing's going to count down. They may not get to it within the countdown, but it's alerted somebody. I know they know about it. And, it's probably happened 4 or 5 times now just for my machine, my desktop, where I've had to update something, and every single time it was lightning fast compared to what we had done before. And that's really, if I'm looking at things objectively, that's all I really want. Do I want the permissions? Yeah, it's nice, but I didn't want the permissions from a control standpoint. I wanted the permissions because it was just easier for me to click something and move on. We're past the stage of that. I'm not an expert in what Angel's an expert in. I have to trust that who I've hired has the tools in place to make my life easier, and that they're going to protect me, just like when he comes to me and says, I need you to insure my business, that he has to have the faith that I'm the professional that I am, that I'm going to be able to do that. And so I'm actually okay with not having the permission, knowing that I can get a reasonably fast solution to whatever that issue is.
Angel, I know what I'm thinking. It's probably what you're thinking. I wish every client would talk and act and think exactly like that, right?
Well, David's very crystal clear. And when we talked originally to take on his business, he was very clear about what he wanted. He wanted speed. He wanted effect. And that was why when I ran into AutoElevate, actually, David was one of the first people I thought of, because I thought, man, we're going to actually be able to get the effect of security and convenience, which is incredibly rare. When you look at all the tools out there, all of them are exactly how David described. They're an obstacle. They get in the way of him doing what he needs to do. So to be able to deliver speed and quality at the same time, that's just a winner right there. What it kicked off was our renewal, because David said out of the 40 or so MSPs that he's got, we're the only ones that had nearly a flat renewal this year.
And it was already dirt cheap relative to everybody else, right? But, I mean, this goes back to there's a general premise in insurance and risk management. For every $2 you invest, or for every dollar you invest in safety, whether it be workers' comp, it could be cyber or whatever, you're going to reap $2 in savings for that. You just have to be willing to invest the dollar on the front end. And so, Angel's renewal may be low, but it's low because he's spent the money in other places to make the investments to make sure that stays where it is. And I can promise you, there are not MSPs in the United States today that are getting flat renewals. It is just not happening. It is the least desirable class of any kind of a technology company or technology-related company out there. They're difficult to underwrite. You can't get your arms around the exposure. They're the gateway to 500, 1,000, however many other, clients that they have. And so for me to see that application come back completely filled out, that's an anomaly in and of itself. But once that happens, and then we get it to underwriting and they say, nope, we're good, we're perfectly comfortable with this risk, we're delivering 200, 300% increases to people, and they can't write the checks fast enough. They're just happy they can get insurance. Angel's a unicorn.
Yep. Indeed so, Angel.
And to speak to David's comment on investment, that's something that I started seeing new on the applications, is that they're actually asking, what is your cybersecurity budget? What did you spend on cybersecurity this year? What did you spend last year? What do you plan on spending it next year? I can see, and they're asking what tools we're using. So they're actually asking, are you using EDR? Who is the EDR vendor? And are you using privileged access management? Who is the privileged access management vendor? Because the ugly side of this is, if you put something in there and it's not true and you have a claim, chances are you're going to get either your claim's going to, because they start paying right away, right? What'll happen is you'll get that nasty clawback after the fact. And that's the thing that I'm very concerned about, especially when clients fill out the applications. I always tell them, look, we have to be factual about this. These policies, especially the one that David's got for us, it pays right away. That means that as soon as we open a claim, breach counsel is involved, forensics is involved, PR is involved, everybody is involved. Money's coming out. That means if I did not fill that out correctly or accurately and it's discovered after the fact, I'm going to have to start writing checks.
Well, the thing is, too, unlike general liability or property insurance or workers' compensation, when you complete an application for cyber liability and professional liability, that application becomes a material part of the policy at that point. So it's not too hard to figure out who cut corners when they were filling out the application and who didn't. And I think that, that's a big deal, man. And, not to go down a rabbit hole, but to speak to what you just said, when the meter starts running immediately when you have a claim, that's a huge deal. There are a lot of people out there that pay for the insurance that think they have coverage when they don't have what they think they have. With everything we deal with at this point with ransomware, in email hacking, all the things that people can do with your email and whatever else, the number of claims are just through the roof. There's a very specific thing that anybody listening to this needs to know, and they need to get off of this podcast when it's over and go check. And that is my policy pay on behalf of, or is my policy a reimbursement form? That is the single biggest question you can ask. And the reason why is because if it's pay on behalf of, the insurance company does exactly what Angel said. They're going to get the ball rolling. The money's going to start flowing. Everything is going to work out, the way that we want it to, assuming that it's a covered claim. If you have a reimbursement form, you have now become a claims adjuster. You now have to handle all of this stuff on your own. And let's face it, you might be good at some things, but you can't be good at everything. And adjusting claims is not something anybody outside of being adjuster, they're not armchair claims adjusters, right? The other thing that people don't think about is the fact, who are the people that conduct these ransomware attacks, right? So number one, how do you pay for it? Because most of this stuff is paid for in crypto. So if I'm a salesperson, and I'm going to put my sales hat on just for a second. If I'm an insurance producer and I go out to meet with an MSP and they tell me, oh, well, we've got this taken care of, one of my first questions is, oh, so you have the appropriate amount of Bitcoin or Ethereum in a crypto wallet, so when this happens, you're able to pay the ransomware right away. And I'm hoping they tell me yes, because I'm going to ask them how much they've had to contribute over the last 24 months as crypto's tanked, so that they have enough money to do it. But more importantly, if they tell me yes, they have that, my next question is, so what mechanism do you have in place in your organization that allows you to scrub the Department of Homeland Security database to make sure that you're not aiding and abetting a known terrorist? Because many of the people that are conducting these ransomware attacks are on terrorist watch lists, and now you've opened yourself up to a whole can of worms you don't want to be involved in. And here's the crazy part. The difference in premium from one to the other is absolutely negligible. It's absolutely negligible. It has to do with who the person is that represents you, and do they truly understand cyber and the forms that come in those policies. It's a buzzword in the insurance industry, okay? Everybody hears it, everybody sees the claims, so everybody wants to talk to their client about cyber. I fear that my peer group is setting themselves up for errors and omissions claims down the road because they're selling a product they don't know and understand to people who are trusting them to do the right thing. And that's the best piece of advice I can probably give you on the whole podcast. If you have bought cyber, go look and see what it says. Angel, you're good. You don't need to check.
David, thank you. That's fantastic advice, and absolutely encourage everyone to go and ask that question exactly. Thank you so much. Another question for you, David, I'm curious on is, are you seeing privileged access management just as a control type starting to be asked by more and more of the carriers?
Yeah, I think I've seen it more this year. It's like the flavor of the month. Every year we've added something. So 2 years ago it was dual factor or multi-factor authentication. Then it went to EDR last year. And I mean, I didn't even know what it was. I had to call Angel and he's the one who educated me on what it was. Now I can speak to it. But then this year we've started seeing more and more things added. So I mean, this is going to be a constant evolution. I liken the cyber marketplace to where employment practices liability was 20 years ago in the insurance industry. And for those who don't know what it is, it's basically insuring you against human resources issue, wrongful termination, wage and hour violations, things like that. Everybody talked about it. Everybody wrote it. Then the claims came in and pricing went up, underwriting appetite constricted, and they started putting sublimits on what? On all the stuff that they had claims on. Right now, if you were to go after, if you get a claim for social engineering, it's highly likely you have $1 million cyber policy, but you have a sublimit of $250,000 for social engineering. I saw one of the carriers, who will remain nameless, has an endorsement for the state of Florida that says if you make a wire based on emailed instructions, there is no coverage. You have to pick up the phone and call and verify that that person is the one who wanted you to send that wire. No more emailed wire and instructions without verification, or there's no coverage at all in the policy. So again, when you see the questions asked and you wonder how that's going to affect coverage, do what I tell every single person that I ever talk to about insurance. Don't worry about the first 15, 20 pages of the policy. Go to the last 15 or 20 because that's where they take away everything they promised you they were giving you in the first half.
I see.
You spoke about your peers, David. I'm concerned about my peers because a lot of my peers like to brand themselves as cybersecurity experts. And in reality, we need to be really cautious because we're bordering on the lines of providing insurance advice and also providing legal advice that we should not be doing. We should be relying on professionals like yourself, professionals like attorneys. You know, one we work with, Lisa, who's absolutely wonderful at giving this type of advice because it's not something I need to be doing. I'm not an attorney, and I don't want to be practicing law without a license. I also don't want to be selling insurance without a license either. So I'm very concerned because in our industry we see so many people pontificating about these things when in reality we need to take a step back, be a little silent, let the experts speak and lay out those things that they're experts in, and then we can come in and say, here are the solutions we have to those problems. Here are the things that we can do to solve the issues that the experts are raising.
And Angel, that's what makes you and David such a great team, right? Because you can stay adjacent to the insurance discussions and say, I'm not the expert, but David is. And David can come in and say, well, I don't know what this PAM stuff is, this EDR stuff is, but I know the guy who does know it. I can go call him and find that answer. So I love that symbiosis that exists between both of you.
And we both know Lisa. There's no chance I'm going to try and do what she does. And, you know, Angel, you say that about practicing without a license, but, you know, on every general liability policy out there, there's actually an exclusion, or I shouldn't say everyone, but almost everyone, there's actually an exclusion for legal malpractice because so many people are giving advice they're not qualified to give. They actually had to put it in the insurance policies in exclusion because somebody got paid. Somebody sued somebody who gave them bad advice, and they ended up getting a settlement, so now we have to exclude it from everybody. But it happens in every industry. Everybody's, you know, we talk about not being an armchair claims adjuster, but everybody's a legal expert. Just ask them. They'll tell you everything they know.
Oh, yeah. And it's really easy for an MSP to just say, hey, do you have a cyber policy? If the answer is yes, what has your insurance agent told you about that policy? What have they told you that's required? Oh, they haven't said anything. Can I make an introduction to somebody who knows something about that? And that's the end of the conversation, right? And that's why I encourage my peers, my MSP industry peers, find somebody like David near you, wherever you're at, that you can rely on, that you can build that relationship with, and then you can refer each other clients, and then you can tackle things together. And then it's not the MSP trying to sell PAM, it's the insurance agent saying, if you don't get this, your premium will be this, or you will not be insurable. And then it's an easy sell.
Well, think about it this way, man. If you have back injuries from a workers' comp perspective and your loss runs clearly say you have a manual material handling issue, what are you going to do? You're going to go find the OSHA standard on manual material handling. You're going to train your people to do it, and you're probably going to invest in back braces or something else to help them make sure that you don't have back injuries anymore. Why do we not do the same thing with the other areas of our business? Because you can't touch and feel it, right? You don't see it. It's not in your face every day. Even though it's on the news, even though it's on the internet, if it hasn't happened to you yet, it's not an issue. One of the best stories I have was a client of mine that is a plumbing company, well known in Tampa, $25 million in revenue. I went to him and I said, listen, you are at a point you need to get cyber insurance. You know, I understand you're a plumber. You're going to tell me you don't need it. You need to seriously consider. I don't need it. Listen, you have people with iPads taking payment in customers' houses every day. Here's something a lot of people don't know. Some paper records are covered under a cyber policy too. Think about personally identifiable information that you may have on employees, whether it be electronic or otherwise. There are things that are covered under a cyber policy you may not think of. So on this particular account, it was a larger engagement for us. So in my world, we don't always take commission when we place a policy. If it's a larger account, we can take the commission out of the deal, and then we just bill our client like an attorney or an accountant does for our time and our efforts on their account. And in this situation, that's what it was. So I didn't have a financial incentive to sell him cyber. My incentive was to give him the best advice possible, which is what he paid me for. So I reminded him of that, and he said, David, I'm telling you, I'm not going to argue with it. I'm not going to spend the money. We're talking about $3,500 a year on a $25 million company. He said, we're not going to do it. Well, guess what? Angel and I had done a dark web scan before I ever went out there. And I didn't want to have to, but I did, and I slid it across the table at him, and I said, listen, I understand you don't think you need this, but here is your username and passwords to quite a few of your financial institutions, and I know they're accurate because the password starts with your oldest daughter's first name. If I can get that, what do you think somebody who really knows what they're doing can get? And he said, how much did you tell me it was again? So here's the moral of the story is spend the money, man. The money for the premium is a drop in the bucket compared to the cost, not even of the claim being settled itself. What does a day being down cost you if you're a manufacturer? It's going to cost you some revenue, right, if you're trying to sell product. But what happens if that product is something you're manufacturing for a third party who lobbied for 2 years to get end cap space at Walmart during the holiday season, and now you missed your deadline, they lose their contract, and me coming from a retail background, you ain't ever getting that space back. You can't even quantify half this stuff.
Yeah, not at all. Great story. I think everyone needs to hear that for sure. Angel, if you don't mind, I'd love to just chat a little bit more when it comes to privileged access management. What were you searching for when you were looking for a solution there?
It's actually not even insurance related. I needed to fill a gap that I had. I looked at my help desk and ticket history, and it was glaring that we had QuickBooks updates that were backing us up. They were taking 15 to 30 minutes to finish a QuickBooks update, and most of it was because we had to log into the computer and update QuickBooks and Elevate, put in the password for the user account control. And so I said, okay, well, let me see if we can automate this at all. And so it took it from 15 to 30 minutes to 45 seconds to 60 seconds to approve it. And then the clients were elated that now they didn't have to wait on us because we could do an auto approval for QuickBooks. They could just install the update themselves and go on their merry way. So that's really how we ran across AutoElevate. And then as we were looking through it, we said, well, this is a no-brainer. Let's just enable it at every client. It lets us check the box for disabling administrative access, and it lets us give them the customer service and give them the experience that David was talking about.
I love that. And can you just share a little bit more too about so it's clear that it's help from service delivery, but you mentioned pulling away administrative access, right? How is that important from a cybersecurity perspective? Can you kind of share your thoughts there?
So that touches on that least privileged or least necessary access that we want to give an end user the least amount of access they need, administrative type of access or access to any computer or any resource that they need in order to do their job. So by being able to remove administrative access away from a user and kind of create that slowdown, it allows, it can prevent a virus from coming in and doing something that requires elevation, or it can prevent a program from installing that would normally need that elevation in order to install or access files in a privileged area of the operating system. And, it's a funny thing because it's kind of a marketing thing, right? When Apple did it, because Apple was almost the first one at removing administrative access, people loved it. When then Microsoft went and did it with user account control, and there was revolt. So it's amazing how a little bit of marketing goes a long way, especially with cybersecurity.
Fair point. I've never thought of that before. It's such a great point. David, last question for you, my friend. This has been just really excellent. When organizations are thinking about what David or what Angel just talked about, privileged access management, from your perspective on the insurance side of the house, what would you say if they're trying to think through cyber insurance and privileged access management? Any words of wisdom or advice there that you'd have?
I think it starts with my peer group. They need to be problem solvers and not paper pushers, right? So we have an issue with the insurance and risk management sector because people make a commission for selling a policy. And because that's the case, they tend to focus on doing that as quickly as they can so they can move on to the next one. Whereas if they focused on solving the problems that these companies have, not only would they get more business, they would retain it longer, and it would be cleaner business for them and their underwriting partners. So I think it has to start, specifically with the MSP educating them, but it also needs to involve the insurance and risk management people also taking the time to educate them on why this is important. I think a lot of times people think, well, I've got money, so somebody will sell me insurance. That's not how it works. I had to have that unfortunate conversation with somebody earlier this week. The reality is, this isn't even about you getting the best rates. This is about you getting covered with anything, even the bad coverage forms, because we're getting to a point where cyber crimes and everything else evolves at such a rapid rate. When you're on a 12-month annual policy, that thing's locked in at the execution at the inception date. Now you're going to ride it for a year. Well, guess what? These bad actors can figure out all kinds of things to do that weren't even contemplated when the policy was bound. 6 months in, you could have 2 or 3 claims on something that was covered, and the insurance company can't get off the account until renewal. So the only way they can fight that is they tighten up underwriting. They're going to look at every single person. They're going to go to your website. They're going to go to your social media. They're going to look at that application. And like Angel said, don't tell me yes or no. Tell me who you're getting it from. And I'm almost getting ready for them to put out a short answer of why you decided to pick this one over another one, But, it's getting to the point where it's 2 and 3 layers deep on each underwriting question to make sure that they actually see it. And the reason why, let's call it what it is. People lie. People don't fill out applications the right way. They're dishonest when they do it. And so it's not a matter of just saying, yeah, we did it. You have to be able to prove it at this point. I mean, it's almost like filling out an expense report for the IRS. I imagine at some point they're going to want to see your monthly bill. We're already seeing, and if you think I'm being ludicrous, audience, let me tell you something. We're already seeing this in auto insurance. If you have a contractor that's got GPS system and dash cams and all of that, I can't just say yes or no anymore. I have to send them a copy of the invoice from the company to prove that they actually have it and that it's active. If you don't think cyber is going to do this, the only person you're kidding is yourself. And again, it doesn't mean that it's not a matter of whether you're going to get the best coverage for the cheapest price. It's a matter of whether or not anybody's even willing to underwrite you, period.
I love it. David, I could listen to you all day, and I think I actually want to make sure that our audience is able to do so. I know you run a podcast. How can people get in touch with you and get a link to the podcast for others to hear more from you?
Yeah, so my podcast is the Power Producers Podcast. It's basically risk management and sales oriented, but we do talk about cyber quite a bit on there. But if they have questions or they want to reach out, David at floridariskpartners.com is the best way to do that. I'm on every social platform known to man. You're not gonna miss me if you type my name in. I will pop up. I can promise you. Preferred platform is LinkedIn, but I'm literally everywhere. So feel free to reach out. Just do me a favor. If you heard me on the podcast and you want to connect, drop me a note as a message and tell me that, because I do actually pay attention to who I connect with on social media, and it's a really flattering thing that you want to connect, and I don't want to not bring you into my network because I just don't know who you are, because there's a high likelihood that if I don't see that I'm not going to accept the connection request at this point.
Fantastic. And Angel, same over to you. I know you've been such a huge educator and friend among MSPs. How can people get in touch with you and tell us more about yourself there?
Best way is on LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn, Angel Rojas, and like David said, give me some compelling reason to connect. Like you heard me on the podcast, because if not, I'm gonna just kind of ignore it. We all get all those LinkedIn crazy LinkedIn messages, but yeah, find me on there. Also, I've been on David's podcast in the past, so I'm on podcasts here and there. So if you look on my website, datacore.com/angel, you can see all of the different podcasts and all the things that I've been saying for years. Again, just educating people and trying to elevate our industry and just bring that professional level of service to our clients.
Angel, David, thank you so much. What an enlightening conversation. I'm sure everyone's going to have a lot of benefits from this. I know there's a lot of key takeaways in this, and thanks for helping demystify a topic that's very, very challenging for a lot of folks. So can't thank you both enough for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Certainly my pleasure. Thank you.